I stepped out of the Blacktown car, and the Vermont air hit my face like a slap of ice. It has been 5 years. 5 years since I walked out of this family's life with nothing but a backpack and a promise that still echoes in my ears. The Sterling Botanical Conservatory towers ahead, its massive glass dome glowing against the dark winter night. Inside, there are 200 guests celebrating the golden jubilee of the family business. They have no idea what is coming. I adjust the vintage emerald brooch on my lapel, feeling the cold metal against my fingers. It matches the deep green of my $6,500 couture suit. My sister, Bianca. I think she is about to announce that I am the charity case for her failing foundation. She thinks she is going to humiliate me into submission in front of the entire town. What she does not know is that this morning, I anonymously purchased the bank that holds the mortgage on this entire estate. She is playing checkers, and I just bought the board. Have you ever been the invisible one in your family? Only to come back stronger than anyone expected. I want to hear your story in the comments. Let me know I am not alone. It was not always like this. 5 years ago, I was the ghost in the walls of the Sterling mansion. I was the invisible utility. I did the taxes. I fixed the Wi-Fi. I proofread the press releases. But Bianca was the golden child. She was praised just for breathing oxygen. I remember the night it finally broke me. We were sitting at the mahogany dinner table. I had just been accepted into a top doctoral program for biotechnology. I was 24. Beaming. Waiting for a single word of approval. Just one. Instead, my father Kenneth raised his wine glass. He looked right through me and said, "A toast to Bianca. She managed to arrive on time for brunch today. That shows real leadership potential." My mother, Teresa, clapped until her bracelets jingled. Nobody even looked at me. For years, I thought if I just tried harder, if I was just more perfect, they would finally see me. I spent my entire youth feeding coins into a vending machine. I put in good grades. I put in obedience. I put in silence. I stood there shaking the machine, screaming at the glass, furious that I never got my snack. It took a therapist in a small office 3,000 miles away to help me realize the truth. The machine was not being mean to me. It was just broken. It had no inventory. There was no love in there to give. No matter how many coins I paid. Once, I understood that. I did not scream anymore. I didn't fight. I just stopped feeding the machine. I packed my bags while they were asleep, left my keys on the counter, and walked out into the snow. I went to find a machine that actually worked. I built Origin from a laptop in a studio apartment, fueled by coffee and the absolute refusal to ever be invisible again. Now, I employ 400 people. My patents protect the environment in 12 countries. I am not the broken girl who left. I am a sovereign nation, and I am about to declare war. 3 days before the Golden Jubilee, I was standing in my office at Origin, looking out over the city skyline. The glass walls were soundproof, but they couldn't filter out the tension when Julian walked in. Julian is my vice president of operations. But really, he is the family I chose. He doesn't knock when it is bad news. He just walked straight to my desk and laid a tablet down on the polished concrete surface. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The screen was glowing with a PDF document, a leaked draft of the program for the Sterling Family Gala. I swiped through the pages. It was the usual pretentious nonsense. Speeches about legacy. Photos of my parents looking like royalty. And then, on page 4, I saw it. My heart didn't speed up. It actually slowed down. There was my name. Sienna Sterling. But I wasn't listed as a guest. I was listed under the heading Beneficiaries of the Sterling Fresh Start Initiative. I looked up at Julian. He looked ready to punch a wall. He told me they were pitching it to the press that I was the debut success story of their new charity for wayward women. They were going to paint me as the prodigal daughter who crashed and burned, crawling home so the benevolent golden child Bianca could save me with a small stipend and a photo op. It was brilliant. Actually, if I didn't show up, I looked ungrateful. If I did show up, I was admitting I needed their help. It was a trap designed to strip me of my dignity before I even walked through the door. 5 years ago, that would have crushed me. But I am not 24 anymore. I handed the tablet back to Julian and asked him one question. I asked him about the financials. Julian smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. He told me he had been digging into the Sterling Foundation's books for 48 hours. He told me the truth behind the glossy brochures. The foundation was bleeding. They were insolvent. Bianca had been playing a shell game with the money, moving funds around to hide massive losses. And the best part? The bank was quietly shopping around their distressed debt. The mortgage on the conservatory, the family estate, even the loan backing the Golden Jubilee itself. It was all bundled up in a toxic portfolio. The bank was desperate to unload. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I swiveled my chair back to my 3 monitors. I opened a secure line to our acquisitions department. I told Julian to buy it. All of it. I told him to set up a blind trust. An anonymous LLC that couldn't be traced back to me until I wanted it to be. I authorized the transfer of $12 million to purchase the Sterling family debt for pennies on the dollar. Julian asked if I wanted to send a cease and desist letter regarding the program. I shook my head. No warning shots. Let them print the programs. Let Bianca prepare her little speech about saving her poor, broken sister. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to stand on that stage, holding the microphone, thinking she had won. Right up until the moment the floor dropped out. I pulled up the digital invitation to the Jubilee. I typed a reply. I didn't offer explanations or ask for corrections. I typed 2 words, "I'll attend." Then I hit send. And I watched the status change from pending to confirmed. They wanted a charity case. Fine. I would show up. But I wasn't coming for a handout. I was coming to foreclose. I pushed through the heavy bronze doors of the Sterling Botanical Conservatory. And the transition was violent. 1 second. I was in the biting Vermont wind. The next, I was hit by a wall of humid, orchid-scented heat. It was like stepping into a terrarium, or a cage. The glass dome soared 50 feet above us, lit by thousands of fairy lights, designed to look magical. To me, it just looked expensive to heat. I scanned the room. 200 guests. The local elite. Men in tuxedos that were a few years out of style. Women clutching champagne flutes, like life preservers. And then, there was my family. I saw them holding court near the marble fountain. My mother, Teresa. I was laughing too loudly at a joke that definitely wasn't that funny. My father, Kenneth, was scanning the room with the desperate, shifting eyes of a man trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. I started walking. The sharp click of my heels on the marble floor sounded like a countdown. Heads turned. I knew exactly what they were seeing. They expected the broken girl, the prodigal failure returning for a handout. Instead, they got a woman wearing a $6,500 suit that fit like armor. The emerald brooch on my lapel caught the light. A green eye staring back at their judgment. Kenneth saw me first. His smile faltered. Just for a fraction of a second. Then the mask slammed back into place. He marched toward me. Not to welcome a daughter, but to intercept a threat. "Sienna," he said. His voice was low. That practiced whisper he used to use when he was telling me I was ruining a family dinner. "You actually came." "Hello, Father," I said. My voice was calm, steady. It didn't pitch up in hope or tremble in fear. It was just a statement of fact. He looked me up and down, frowning at the suit. He probably couldn't place the designer, but he could smell the money. And it confused him. He leaned in closer, invading my personal space. The smell of expensive scotch and stale anxiety washed over me. "Listen to me," he hissed. "Bianca has a big night planned. This initiative is critical for the foundation. Critical for the family image. Do not make a scene." I stared at him. He was so small. "She is going to mention you," he continued, his voice tightening. "She is offering you a hand up. You just nod, smile, and look grateful. We can discuss arrangements for your debts privately later." The arrogance was breathtaking. He really believed it. He believed I was broke. He believed they were the saviors. He believed he still held the leash. 5 years ago, I would have shrunk. I would have stammered that I didn't need help. I would have tried to prove myself, to show him my grades, my achievements. begging for a crumb of respect. Now I just looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip. I looked at the fraying cuffs of his tuxedo shirt. I realized something that almost made me laugh. He wasn't scary. He was just a man in a room he no longer owned, talking to a woman who owned him. I wouldn't dream of making a scene. "Dad," I said. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf watching a rabbit explain why it was safe. "I am just here to watch the show." He blinked, unsettled by the lack of resistance. He opened his mouth to issue another command. But I stepped around him. I didn't ask for permission to leave. I just moved. I walked deeper into the humidity, past the whispers and the staring eyes, straight toward the head table, where the only person in this family worth respecting was waiting. My grandmother. Grandma Elise was sitting in her custom titanium wheelchair near the orchestra, looking less like an 80-year-old widow and more like a retired general reviewing the troops. She wore black velvet and diamonds, real enough to cut glass. Her eyes, sharp and gray, tracked me across the room. The air around us seemed to thicken. I could feel the eyes of my mother, Teresa, burning into my back. She was probably holding her breath, waiting for the matriarch to dress me down, waiting for Elise to scold me for 5 years of silence, for missing Christmas, for being the ungrateful stain on the family tapestry. They wanted a scene. They wanted me humbled by the only authority figure they still feared. I stopped in front of her chair. I didn't bow. I didn't apologize. I just stood there. A woman who had built an empire, facing the woman who had built the one crumbling around us. "Hello, grandmother," I said softly. Elise didn't smile. She studied my face, her gaze dissecting me with the precision of a surgeon. Then, her eyes shifted to the emerald brooch on my lapel. A tiny spark of amusement lit up her face. "You kept it," she said. Her voice was raspy, but it had lost none of its steel. It was the only thing worth taking. I replied. She chuckled. A dry, rattling sound that no one else could hear over the string quartet. Then, she did something that made my mother gasp from across the room. She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was like parchment paper, thin and dry, but her grip was surprisingly strong. She pulled me closer, forcing me to bend down until our faces were inches apart. "You look expensive." "Sienna," she whispered. "Good. It scares them." I smirked. "That is the point. I assumed you would figure it out eventually," she murmured, her eyes darting toward Bianca, who was preening near the stage. "But I didn't expect you to buy the bank." That was a nice touch. Ruthless. I like it. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at her. "How did you know?" Elise raised an eyebrow. "Who do you think leaked the financials to your Julian?" The world tilted on its axis. I had thought Julian's team had dug up the dirt through forensic accounting hacks. I never suspected the leak came from the head of the table. "You," I whispered. "Why?" "Because I am old." "Sienna." "Not senile." She let go of my hand and smoothed the velvet over her knees. "I built this legacy with your grandfather. I watched your parents turn it into a social club. But Bianca, I watched Bianca turn it into a piggy bank." She gestured vaguely at the room, at the champagne fountains and the desperate opulence. I suspected she was skimming from the foundation a year ago. Elisa continued, her voice dropping even lower. "But I needed proof. Not just numbers. I needed to know who she really was. So, I set a trap. A trap. I call it a honeypot," she said, a wicked gleam in her eye. "I instructed the family trust managers to leave the elder care account accessible. I removed the dual signature requirement. I made it look like a clerical error. Just a pile of money, sitting there, unguarded." I stared at her, stunned by the cold calculation of it. "You tested her. Character is what you do when you think no one is watching." Elisa said. "It took her 3 weeks. She didn't just take a little Sienna. She drained it. $950,000. She stole from her own grandmother to fund her trips to Milan, and this ridiculous party. She thinks I am a helpless old woman who doesn't read her bank statements." She reached into the hidden pocket of her wheelchair and pulled out a slim manila envelope. She pressed it into my hand. This is the forensic audit I commissioned 2 months ago. It traces every cent. I already sent a copy to the Attorney General. But I thought you might want to hold the original while you watch her fall. I looked down at the envelope. Then back at her. The woman I had feared leaving. The woman I thought would judge me for abandoning the family. Was the one handing me the ammunition. Why didn't you tell them? I asked, glancing at my parents. Because they created her. Elisa said, her voice hardening. They needed a golden child so badly, they forgot to teach her right from wrong. They don't need a warning. Sienna, they need a wake-up call. And you are the only one strong enough to ring the bell. She squeezed my hand one last time, then leaned back in her chair, composing her face into a mask of benign disinterest. Go stand by the wall, she commanded. The show is about to start. And Sienna? I paused. Yes. Grandmother. Don't blink. I stepped back, clutching the envelope against my side. My parents were staring at us, confused by the lack of bloodshed. They didn't understand. They thought I was the enemy. They didn't realize that the executioner was sitting right at their table. And I was just the witness. I moved to the back of the room, finding a shadow to stand in. The lights dimmed. The music swelled. Bianca stepped onto the stage, glowing in the spotlight. Completely unaware that the floor she was standing on had already been sawed through, the room went dark, save for a single, brilliant spotlight that cut through the humidity to find the stage. Bianca stepped into the light. She looked immaculate. She was wearing a silver gown that shimmered like moonlight on water, her hair perfectly coiffed, her smile practiced to the millimeter. She looked like the angel of the Sterling family. But I was holding the envelope that proved she was just a vulture in couture. She tapped the microphone twice, a soft, confident sound that echoed through the glass dome. The room fell silent. My parents gazed up at her with adoration that bordered on religious worship. This was the moment they lived for. Their perfect daughter, cementing their legacy. Welcome, everyone, Bianca said, her voice dripping with that fake, honeyed warmth she reserved for donors and press. Tonight is about 50 years of excellence. But more than that, it is about family. It is about the bonds that hold us together, even when things get difficult, even when people lose their way. I leaned against a marble pillar in the back, clutching the audit report against my ribs. I could feel the heat of it through my suit. She was so good at this. She was weaving a narrative of benevolence, painting herself as the saint who kept the family flame burning, while others, meaning me, let it die. She paused for effect, looking down at her notes, then looked up with an expression of performative bravery. We believe in second chances, she continued. That is why tonight, I am so proud to announce the Sterling Fresh Start Initiative, a program dedicated to helping women who have stumbled, women who have made poor choices and need a guiding hand to find their dignity again. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. And we are starting right here at home, Bianca said, her voice trembling with theatrical emotion. We are so happy to welcome back my little sister, Sienna. The spotlight swung wildly, searching the room for me. It found me in the shadows, blinding me for a second. 200 heads turned. I didn't blink. I didn't look down. I just stared right back at her. Life has been complicated for Sienna, Bianca said, looking directly at me with a pitying smile that was sharper than a knife. But we are here to help her get back on her feet. Sienna, please, come up here. We have a gift for you. The trap had sprung. This was the moment I was supposed to crumble. I was supposed to walk that long walk of shame, accept their check, and let them use my humiliation to polish their halos. The silence in the room was suffocating. My father was gesturing frantically for me to move. But I didn't move, because the heavy glass doors at the main entrance swung open with a sound like a thunderclap. It wasn't the waiters. It wasn't late guests. 3 men in dark suits walked in. They moved with the terrifying purpose of government officials who are not paid by the hour. The lead investigator, a man named Detective Miller, scanned the room. He didn't look at the guests. He didn't look at the flowers. He looked straight at the stage. The crowd parted as Detective Miller marched straight to the stage. Bianca Sterling, he announced, flashing his badge. You are under arrest for embezzlement. Bianca's arrogance crumbled instantly. That's a lie. Grandma gave me that money. Grandma Elise remained silent and cold. The handcuffs clicked, the sound of a 50-year lie finally breaking. As the police dragged Bianca away, screaming and humiliated. She looked at me in pure fear. I didn't smile. I just watched. The boomerang had returned. The guests fled, leaving only the wreckage of the Sterling dynasty. Kenneth didn't look ashamed. He looked calculating. Fix this, Sienna. It demanded. You have millions. We raised you to be tough. You owe us. No, I said, my voice steady. You think my success is a tribute to you. It isn't. It is a fortress against you. I built it so I would never have to ask you for anything again. You broke Bianca by worshipping her. You broke me by ignoring me. I dropped the legal documents on the table. I bought the debt. I own the mortgage and the business. Effective immediately. Grandma Elise is in control. You two are retired in Florida. 18 months later, standing in the new educational center, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. I swiped left and archived the message. Indifference is the final victory.